Ancient American civilizations. They're older than we think. When most people think of ancient civilizations, they picture the pyramids of Egypt, the temples of Mesopotamia, or the marble columns of Greece. The story we've been told is that civilization began in the Old World, that Europe, Africa, and Asia were the cradles of human advancement, while the Americas were waiting to be discovered. But what if that story isn't true? What if the civilizations of the Americas are far older and far more advanced than we've ever been told? For centuries, history textbooks have started their stories thousands of miles away, as if the Western Hemisphere was an empty stage before Columbus arrived. But archaeology tells a different tale, one written not in ink, but in stone, clay, and bone. Beneath the jungles, deserts, and mountains of the Americas lie the remains of societies that rivaled anything in the ancient world. And some of them may have been thriving long before Egypt built its first pyramid. Let's start where the official story usually begins, the Olmec civilization of ancient Mexico. Known as the mother culture of Mesoamerica, the Olmec are often credited as the first major civilization of the Americas, emerging around 1200 BCE. But even that date may be far too young. The Olmec left behind colossal stone heads, some weighing over 40 tons, carved from basalt, and transported across miles of swampland. An engineering feat we still can't fully explain. Beneath their ceremonial centers, archaeologists have found layers of earlier structures, suggesting that the culture that gave rise to the Olmec might go back thousands of years further than we realize. And the mystery deepens. Just a few hundred miles away, a site called San Lorenzo shows evidence of urban planning and complex water systems from a time when most of Europe was still in the Bronze Age. The Olmec didn't emerge from nowhere. They were the heirs of something older, something that may have started long before recorded history. Further south in the jungles of Guatemala and Honduras, the Maya built one of the most sophisticated civilizations the world has ever known. For decades, historians thought the Maya reached their height around 700 CE. Great city-states like Tikal, Palenque, and Copan, rising amid the forests. But new discoveries using LiDAR scanning, technology that can see through jungle canopy, have changed everything. Beneath the trees, scientists have found tens of thousands of hidden structures, roads, fortifications, houses, farms, and entire cities that were once invisible to the naked eye. The Maya world wasn't a collection of small city-states. It was a massive, interconnected civilization with highways, reservoirs, and a population that may have reached 15 million people. And it's not just their scale that's shocking, it's their age. Some newly found ruins date back to 1000 BCE or earlier, centuries before the classical period we once thought was their beginning. Their calendar, their astronomical knowledge, their writing, all of it points to an intellectual tradition that had been developing for thousands of years before we ever noticed it. Move further back in time and further north, and the surprises keep coming. In Louisiana, there's a site called Poverty Point, built around 1700 BCE, long before the Maya or the Olmec. Here, massive earthworks form concentric ridges over 3/4 of a mile wide, with mounds rising more than 70 feet tall. It was once believed that ancient North Americans were simple hunter-gatherers at this time, incapable of large-scale construction or social organization. Poverty Point destroyed that assumption. Its creators moved millions of cubic feet of soil by hand, built precise geometrical patterns, and traded goods from across the continent. Copper from the Great Lakes, shells from the Gulf, stone from the Appalachians. We don't know what they called themselves. We don't know what they believed. But we do know this. They were building monuments when Stonehenge was still standing tall. And they were doing it in what we once thought was a primitive land. Then there's Corral, deep in the Supe Valley of Peru. Discovered in the late 1990s, Corral turned archaeology on its head. The city dates back to around 2600 BCE, roughly the same time the Great Pyramid of Giza was being constructed. Let that sink in. While the pharaohs ruled the Nile, people in the Americas were already building vast ceremonial centers with pyramids, plazas, and amphitheaters. Corral's people had musical instruments, irrigation canals, and trade networks that stretched across hundreds of miles. They farmed, fished, and thrived without the need for warfare or fortifications. For decades, textbooks claim that civilization was born in Mesopotamia and spread outward, but Corral proves that human genius arose independently in the Americas, just as ancient, just as brilliant. And Corral isn't alone. Far to the south, along the coast of Peru, archaeologists have found even older sites, some dating back to 3,500 BCE or more. The people of Norte Chico, as they're known, built pyramids long before the Maya or Aztecs ever existed. Yet somehow, their story barely made it into mainstream history until just a few decades ago. Why? Because the idea that advanced civilization could have developed independently in the Americas didn't fit the old narrative. But the story doesn't stop in South America. In the Andes, civilizations rose and fell like waves across millennia. The Chavin, who flourished around 900 BCE, left behind massive stone temples with intricate carvings of jaguars, serpents, and eagles. Their art and architecture influenced cultures that came after them: the Moche, the Nazca, and eventually the Inca. And the Inca themselves, often portrayed as a relatively young empire of the 1400s, may have been heirs to traditions thousands of years older. The famous city of Cusco was built on top of much older foundations. The stones at Sacsayhuaman, enormous interlocking blocks weighing up to 200 tons, fit together so perfectly that you can't slip a knife blade between them. Some of these stones predate the Inca by centuries, maybe even millennia. No one knows for sure who first carved them or how. And then, of course, there's Tiwanaku, near the shores of Lake Titicaca in modern-day Bolivia. Once thought to have been built around 500 CE, some researchers now believe parts of Tiwanaku could be thousands of years older. The site's precision-cut stones, astronomical alignments, and mysterious carvings suggest an advanced understanding of engineering and the cosmos. Local legends say it was built by the gods themselves, long before the flood that wiped the world clean. It's easy to dismiss that as myth, until you stand before those stones and realize no one today can say exactly how they were moved. The pattern is clear. From North to South America, from ancient earthworks to megalithic temples, from jungle cities to desert pyramids, the archaeological evidence tells a story that our textbooks still struggle to catch up to. The civilizations of the Americas were not isolated, primitive, or young. They were old and incredibly old, and deeply connected through trade, belief, and shared knowledge. Even in North America, new discoveries are rewriting the very foundation of what we thought we knew about ancient civilization. For decades, school books began the human story with the great river cultures: Mesopotamia, Egypt, the Indus Valley, and China, as if humanity's first complex societies emerged only in those cradles of civilization. But evidence from the Americas tells a far more complex and thrilling story. At sites like Watson Break in Louisiana, dated to around 3,400 BCE, people were already constructing monumental earthworks thousands of years before the Egyptian pyramids rose from the desert sands. These early builders shaped massive mounds in precise circular patterns, aligned to celestial events, requiring planning, labor organization, and astronomical knowledge that few thought possible for pre-agricultural peoples of the region. Their work wasn't random or primitive. It was intentional, symbolic, and deeply connected to cycles of nature, suggesting a worldview rooted in harmony rather than domination. And Watson Break is not alone. Across the Mississippi Valley, similar mound complexes such as Poverty Point, Cahokia, and Serpent Mound speak to a deep and enduring tradition of architecture, engineering, and social coordination. These sites were not random piles of soil. They were sacred landscapes, calendars, temples, and gathering places, built by societies that understood both the earth and the heavens. Meanwhile, in South America, new excavations and dating techniques continue to shatter old assumptions. In caves high in the Andes and along the coasts of Chile and Peru, archaeologists have uncovered evidence of organized settlements, trade networks, and agricultural experimentation that stretch back tens of thousands of years earlier than mainstream archaeology once allowed. The Corral Soup civilization of coastal Peru, for example, predates the Egyptian pyramids and shows evidence of urban planning, music, and communal architecture. all achieved without warfare or conquest. Each new discovery pushes the timeline further back. Each artifact, a carved stone, a woven textile, a buried tool, whispers the same quiet truth. Humanity's story did not begin in one cradle of civilization. It began everywhere, in parallel, as different peoples found their own ways to thrive, to build, and to understand the cosmos. Yet for centuries, the civilizations of the Americas were dismissed or diminished by scholars who sought to preserve a linear, Eurocentric view of progress. Their achievements were treated as anomalies, their cities described as accidents, their science and art attributed to outside influence or pure coincidence. But the growing mountain of evidence has made that old hierarchy impossible to sustain. The ancient Americas were not waiting to be discovered. They had already discovered themselves, inventing calendars, irrigation systems, astronomy, and monumental art long before Europeans ever crossed the Atlantic. And what's even more astonishing is how much remains hidden. Beneath the dense green canopy of the Amazon rainforest, LiDAR technology, which uses lasers to see through vegetation, is revealing entire networks of geometric earthworks, roads, canals, and cities that were invisible for centuries. Some archaeologists now estimate that hundreds, perhaps thousands, of undiscovered settlements still lie buried beneath the jungle. What we once thought of as untouched wilderness was, in fact, a living landscape, shaped, cultivated, and sustained by sophisticated societies that understood ecology better than we do today. The Amazon wasn't empty. It was alive with people, with art, with ceremony and science woven seamlessly into the forest itself. So maybe it's time to rewrite the story, not just of America, but of humanity itself. The truth is still emerging, still waiting beneath layers of earth and myth. Every dig, every discovery brings us closer to understanding how deep our roots really go. The evidence is there, buried in the soil, hidden under jungles, scattered in stone. The Americas were ancient long before history gave them permission to be, because the civilizations of the Americas weren't echoes of the old world. They were their own melody, played thousands of years before anyone thought they could be. And the more we learn, the clearer it becomes. The ancient Americas were not a forgotten chapter of history. They were one of its first. If you love uncovering the hidden truths of our past, the real stories behind the myths, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who loves history, and subscribe to the channel.